This is the Sunday stream opening song because the other song is copyrighted. La 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 la. Oh look, here comes Dog Cat Fox.
Hi, Sky.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday stream, the stream I do on Sundays, because Sunday is the day to stream on Sundays. Hope you're all doing well on this beautiful Sunday morning. It actually is quite nice out right now. It's nice and sunny and kind of cool out. You know, you got the sun coming down on all the green leaves and everything, making everything very warm and welcoming. A bit of apology ahead of time. I have a quite froggy throat this morning for some reason. I'm not quite sure why. I don't feel sick or anything, but my voice is a little ugh. So hopefully I won't have too many clearings and coughings as we go. But if we do, I will do my best to mute myself ahead of time and explain myself afterwards. So I might go a little more even-keeled today to try to save my voice. Because we got a lot to get through today. Surprisingly enough, a couple of things happened in the last few hours that I didn't know were going to happen. And so I thought I'd add them into the show just for the sake of completion. But before we get to all that, who's joining me on this beautiful Sunday morning? Molly Okami, good morning. And first, now if you'd be so kind, like, comment after the stream, and share the video to aid Scribe's rise in the YouTube algorithm for the algorithm. Thank you, Molly. And Molly, I appreciate all of the comments that you put on the videos to assist with the theory that it helps the algorithm. I can't say I've personally seen a result, but then YouTube is a mysterious beast. But either way, I appreciate it, and I appreciate anybody else who follows your example. Thank you. Noah Alexander Asensio. He's risen up in the world. Like the great conqueror, he's now Noah Alexander Asensio. Good morning, Noah. Dom O'Leary, good morning to you. Old Guy Gamer, good morning, and thanks, Old Guy Gamer, for sharing out the link to the stream earlier. Appreciate that. Keeverdam, good morning to you, and thank you, Keeverdam, as always, for providing the links to the GoFundMes and fundraisers for our friends AJ, Roan Harushan, Natalie, and Angela Ariaga. If you guys can take a look at those and donate if you are able. If you're not, that's fine, but if you can share those out on social media, that would as well be appreciated. So thank you for that, and thank you, Keeverdam, for that, and for sharing out the stream last night. Appreciate it. Advocatus Diaboli, good morning to you. Who else is here? All types of people. Mike R, good morning. JB, good morning to you. TFA Works, good morning. Robert Pincus, good morning. Kiro Soldier, good morning. Somnamnul Nation, good morning to you. Angelverse, good morning. The Best Remy, good morning. Snortopoopus Cuber, good morning to you. Faustonia, good morning. Who else is here? All types of people. Oh my gosh, Shadowclaw. Awoo! Good morning, Shadowclaw. And SWD40. Good morning to you. And I think that's everyone. That's everyone I see. So if you're lurking, or if you're in the future, good morning to you. So a little bit of an additional update from last week's reports on what was going on in New York. New York just can't catch a break, and most especially those who have the title of police commissioner, whether appointed or interim. Because here we go again, New York City's interim police commissioner. This isn't the police commissioner that just resigned. This is the guy that took over to fill in for the guy that just resigned. New York City's interim police commissioner says federal authorities seized materials from his home. It just keeps getting worse. Federal authorities searched the homes of New York City's newly named interim police commissioner and seized materials unrelated to his police work, he said. That's great. The unexplained and unexpected search comes as the administration of Mayor Eric Adams reels from other federal law enforcement investigations. We know of 4. There are at least 4 separate investigations taking place right now in or around Eric Adams' administration. We don't know the details or the causes for all of them, but we know that there's at least 4. Thomas Donlan, who became the interim police commissioner just 1 week ago after the resignation of his predecessor, issued a statement late Saturday through the police department. Quote, on Friday, September 20th, federal authorities executed search warrants at my residences. Residences? I'm lucky to have it in singular. But anyway, they took materials that came into my possession approximately 20 years ago and are unrelated to my work with the New York City Police Department, the statement said. What? Materials from 2 decades ago. Okay. Quote, "This is not a department matter, and the department will not be commenting," he added. So this is a personal issue? The interim police commissioner for New York, replacing the guy that just resigned, has something that's been following him around for 20 years that he's now being investigated for by federal authorities. Okay. Curiouser and curiouser. The statement did not address what the investigation was about, which federal authorities were involved, or what materials had been seized. Fabian Levy, the city's deputy mayor for communications, said, quote, "As we have repeatedly said, we expect all team members to fully comply with any law enforcement inquiry." Yes, I would assume you would. Just a week ago, the previous police commissioner, Edward Caban, resigned after federal authorities seized his electronic devices as part of an investigation that also involved his brother, a former police officer. Yes, as we covered last week, the people in and around Mayor Eric Adams, their various occupations and or contracts for opportunities were very incestuous, seemed like. Federal agents have also seized phones in recent weeks from the head of city's public schools, a top deputy mayor, Adams' top public safety advisor, and others. Previously, investigators searched homes connected to Adams' top campaign fundraiser and the Democrats' Asian Affairs director. And just keep in mind, everything in that paragraph is referring to multiple investigations. It's not all the same one. We've got all types of crazy things going on. Last autumn, federal agents also seized Adams' phone as he left an event. Charges have not been brought in connection with any of those searches, and it was unclear whether there was any connection to the search involving Donlin, who wasn't part of the Adams administration until a few days ago. Well, yeah, if they seized materials from 20 years ago, I'm assuming whatever it is something that predates all of this. Maybe. An FBI spokesperson declined to comment. An email seeking comment from a spokesperson for the U.S. Attorney in Manhattan was not immediately returned. A text sent to Adams' top spokesperson late Saturday night also wasn't immediately returned. Donlin spent decades with the FBI, and if they're seizing stuff from 20 years ago, what was he doing in those decades? Where he worked on terrorism cases, including the investigation into the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center, the 1998 bombings of U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania, and a 2000 attack on a U.S. Navy destroyer. Roughly 20 years ago, he was a top counterterrorism official for the FBI in New York. Okay. From 2009 to 2010, Donlin led New York State's Office of Homeland Security before going into the private sector security industry. I can't help but think of Bernard Kerik in that timeline, because Bernard Kerik was the first guy that was up to be the leader of Homeland Security. And he was, I believe he was an FBI veteran of some sort. And then a whole bunch of crazy stuff was revealed about him, and he had to be taken off the list by the Bush administration. That's got nothing to do with this guy, I don't think. But when I think of like people involved in Homeland Security around the early 2000s who had something shady going on, I first think of Bernard Kerik. And I guess now, if they're looking for information from 20 years ago, maybe this guy's on that same list. Adams appointed Donlin as his commissioner last week, and he assumed the post on September 13th, 1 week ago Friday. The choice of an outsider with a long career in federal law enforcement, but no history of working with the NYPD, appeared at the time to be a potentially stabilizing move for the police department after Caban's resignation. Here's the other thing, too. I'm assuming, again, this is all speculative because we don't know what the heck's going on. I'm assuming that the investigation into Donlin had begun long before his appointment to police commissioner. So it was just a bad coincidence that they decided to enact the thing then, probably because he became interim police commissioner. It's like, well, we didn't see that coming, so now we have to... I don't know. This is crazy. Caban and his brother, James Caban, who runs a nightlife security business, convenient, had both denied any wrongdoing through their lawyers. We're not even sure what they're supposed to have done yet. Through it all, Adams, who is in his first term, has said he won't be distracted by the investigations and will continue to serve the city. I don't know, dude. You've got 4, now 5 investigations involving the people within your inner circle as mayor, as well as yourself. I mean, if you can resist being distracted, okay. I don't know if confidence in your ability to lead or govern is going to survive, but keep up a stiff upper lip, I suppose. Thank you, Angelverse, for the snoozy emoji. Oh, am I boring you? I'm sorry. I'll move on to something more exciting, I promise. I apologize. Anyway, so that's the update from New York. Curiouser and curiouser, things keep getting worse over there. And again, Eric Adams is the same guy who, prior to and after Joe Biden became president, was like, yes, send us all of your illegal immigrants. We're not like Trump. And then once they actually started doing that, he's like, stop, you're destroying New York. I don't know. New York is a heck of a town. Heck of a town. Anyway, let's move on to maybe the top story, which has been updated since I originally posted the stream. So there has been additions to this. Kamala Harris challenges Donald Trump to CNN debate in October. Trump says it's just too late. Now, I haven't read this article yet. I only know the headline information so far, so I'm going to give my little thoughts on this. First and foremost, the debate was supposed to take place on October 23rd. Remember, the election is in the first week of November. So October 23rd is a little late in the game. By now, people have already started voting in places that have early voting. And most people, not necessarily all, but most people probably already know who they're going to vote for if they're going to vote at all. All the same, you put a debate that's supposed to inform the American people of the candidates' positions and attitudes and so on right at the edge of the election itself, it's probably not going to be very useful to anybody, and unless something disastrous happens on stage. Now, I can only assume that they did this in order to, because probably the Trump campaign thought the same thing, or similar things, and so they decline, and so Kamala Harris can say, aha, Donald Trump is running away from debating me. Except you have to recall that Kamala Harris was supposed to take over the other 2 debates that Biden originally agreed to, or had at least tentatively agreed to, but she declined those. So she was running away before she set up a situation where Donald's going to decline and she can say he's running away. This is all, sometimes I realize that it does come down to brass tacks, but this is all very sort of schoolyard, childish kind of gamesmanship sometimes. But that's what we have to work with, apparently. Anyway, let's move on. Update. This is an update from the story when it was originally posted. Okay, jumped. At a rally Saturday afternoon in Wilmington, North Carolina, former President Donald Trump argued, quote, it's just too late, unquote, to have a second presidential debate with Vice President Kamala Harris because early voting has begun in several states. Quote, I'd love to in many ways, but it's too late, Trump told a crowd of supporters. Okay. But previously, prior to that, Vice President Kamala Harris has accepted an invitation from CNN to debate former President Donald Trump. The potential debate is slated for October 23rd. Quote, Vice President Harris is ready for another opportunity to share a stage with Donald Trump, campaign chair Jen O'Malley Dillon said in a statement per CNN. Donald Trump should have no problem agreeing to this debate. And if he doesn't, he's obviously a coward. Or something. Harris posted Saturday on X/Twitter that she... Just call it X. It's not Twitter anymore. I mean, I still do it myself, but still... I don't know. The more I see it now, it feels like some kind of like gesture of defiance against Elon Musk to keep calling it Twitter. I don't have that, but yeah. Harris posted on Saturday on X/Twitter that she, quote, will gladly accept a second presidential debate. Well, why didn't you accept the second one that was supposed to happen later in September or early October? Before, when you declined the other two. Anyway. And hopes Trump will join her. Oh, is she going to show up without Trump? Is she going to do a town hall kind of thing by herself if Trump doesn't show? I mean, honestly, that would probably be a decent move, PR-wise. It's like, well, I tried to set up a debate, Donald wouldn't show up, so let's do a town hall. Except she won't, because the idea of Kamala, I mean, unless all the questions are pre-approved and she's got an earpiece. But she wouldn't do a town hall. She wouldn't do an open, unscripted town hall if her life depended on it. CNN, quote, offered the campaigns a format similar to the June debate in which Trump and Harris would field moderators' questions for 90 minutes without a live studio audience, according to the news network. Quote, both Vice President Harris and former President Trump received an invitation to participate in a CNN debate this fall, as we believe the American people would benefit from a second debate between the two candidates for the President of the United States. Yeah, they would have too if they'd stuck to the same schedule that was originally established with Biden, that Kamala ducked on. But anyway. Quote, we look forward to receiving a response from both campaigns so the American public can hear more from these candidates as they make their final decision. The first presidential debate between Harris and Trump, but not the first presidential debate of this campaign, if you notice, hosted by ABC, occurred on September 10th in Philadelphia, where the two candidates discussed topics like abortion and immigration. Those things did happen, yes. Trump also debated President Joe Biden in June on CNN when Biden was still in the race. Good. I'm glad you at least mentioned that part. There have been two presidential debates, and it's been a different Democratic candidate each time. Following the September debate, Trump declared in a lengthy post on Truth Social, there will be no third debate. Well, there you go. But yeah, so a little bit of pointless chicanery, I think. If you're really honest about wanting to get a message out to the American people or something, just do it now. Put it together. Things were already pre-scheduled before Biden and Trump debated the first time. There was already plans in the air. And then they all got thrown out the window because Biden stepped down and Kamala doesn't want to do any debates. And I still, every interview that I've seen so far with Kamala has been sketchy in some way, shape, or form. Like, we just saw footage, like behind-the-scenes footage of the Oprah, quote-unquote, interview, where there was a teleprompter rolling by the whole time. It's like, what's going on? It's so fake. I don't understand. I'm at this point, I'm not voting in the presidential. I have problems with both candidates, just like I did in the last election, just like I did in the election previous to that. But I got to tell you, Kamala can win by default. We've seen it several times now before. It is not a 0% chance that Kamala Harris is going to become president of the United States. In fact, it's a pretty good chance. And not on the basis of merit, but on the basis of few options to the Democratic side of things, and on the basis of Trump not doing himself any favors. I keep going over the debate sometimes in my head, little points in there, and I'm just like, she opened the door so wide for Trump to take her down and to counter her in so many easy ways. And it was, if you watch the stream with Sinatra and I as we were live commentarying the debate, there were just so many easy opportunities to counter her right in front of him. The one that keeps getting me, and I brought this up on the Sinatra stream, the one that keeps getting me is Kamala Harris's complaint that Donald Trump loves authoritarians and he talks to Vladimir Putin and so on and so forth. And and the one where she said, and you had the Taliban to Camp David. This important location. I think she called it, I think she almost called it like a sacred location or something. You had the Taliban at Camp David. And I'm just like, lady, I don't know if you recall, President Bill Clinton had Yasser Arafat over at Camp David in order to try to sue for peace in the Middle East. Sometimes, and this is the thing that really gets me, and if you think about her complaint, if you take her complaint seriously, you have to imagine this. You have to imagine a person who wants to be the president of the United States, who is effectively saying that under no circumstances will I discuss anything with a leader of another country who I don't like. I don't know what you think the definition of the word diplomacy is, or pragmatism, but unfortunately, there are people that lead major countries in this world who do not share the same values or run governments the same way as the United States, and yet you are going to have to deal with them if you're president of the United States, unless you're going to be an isolationist, right? How do you expect, and this is the one thing that really got me. Well, it's not the one thing, but several things in that debate. When the moderators kept asking Trump something to the effect of, do you want Ukraine to win the war? And I'm just like, what do you imagine Ukraine winning the war looks like? Do you imagine that Ukrainian soldiers are going to be marching through the streets of Moscow, taking over or something? No, the only definitive positive outcome for the war in Ukraine is a settled peace of some kind. Ukraine cannot win against Russia. Russia has more people, more material, and more will to just grind over, as well as waste all their resources to try to prove a point. You know, the worst possible situation is you have just kind of like a stalemate kind of siege that goes on for years and years and years and years. But the only possible positive outcome is a settled peace. And there's that operative word, settled. Who are you going to settle with? You're going to have to talk to Putin. You're going to have to bring both sides to some kind of table, because otherwise there's no winning for Ukraine. And secondly, how does Kamala Harris imagine reaching a ceasefire in the Middle East right now if you don't talk to Hamas? You're going to have to talk to Hamas. You're going to have to talk to Hezbollah. You're going to have to talk to people you don't like in order to come to the best possible solution, which isn't always the most desirable solution. But that's global politics. So for her to stand on that stage and complain that Donald Trump talks to authoritarian figures, to complain that the Taliban were brought to Camp David, I'm just thinking, okay, take this in isolation. You have someone who wants to become leader of the free world who thinks that she's just gonna, just have dinners with people that she likes and likes her? Maybe she spent too much time at the Naval Observatory having dinners with influencers and celebrities who are all on her side. I don't know. But I can't take her seriously as a statesman at all, if that's really her attitude. So, anyway, that's just a bit of an aside. Frank Hubbard, thank you so much. Swing state polls look favorable to Trump, especially if you compare to 2020 polls versus results. Also, all her ads rely on debunked lies. The true believers don't care about debunked lies. I'm not trying to be pro Kamala here. I'm just trying to be realistic. There is still enough anyone but Trump sentiment, and in the absence of another option, because the Democrats have not given them any other option. The Democrats and those on the left really only have two options. Either they vote for Kamala and hold their nose because they were hoping for somebody better, but they don't like Trump, or they don't vote. That's the other thing, too. They could be driving away people from actually voting for Kamala just because of the shadiness and the craziness of it all. But I think it's still too close to call at this point. And I think that we could be seeing President Kamala Harris by November. Not that I want that. That's the last thing that I want. I think it's going to be a disaster if she's president. Absolute disaster. But man, that whole thing of her, Donald Trump wants to take us to the past. I'm taking us forward. It's so easy. It's like I said, if I was Donald Trump, I would have gone, hey, I don't know. The past was looking pretty good compared to where you guys took us. I don't know. Inflation, the economy, jobs, everything else. Before the pandemic hit, everything was going pretty good. I'd like to go back to that past. I don't know about you. There were so many ways he could have won that debate so easily. Anyway, but I don't know. I have too many hopes for the people who are supposed to be our best and brightest. Thank you, Keeverdam, for the lovely, smiley, Nancy, Dogcat Fox. Oh, Dogcat Fox.
Wow-wee! Wow! Wow!
Ooh, there's a drunken Uncle Dogcat Fox. Thank you so much, Keeverdam. Appreciate it. So there's my little diatribe on the debate. But, anyway. Let's see. Shadowclaw. Scribeblade. Zelensky will never give up. He refused to do a treaty before the war under Trump. He will refuse now. Yeah, well, that's his position. Unless or until he gets something that he wants. And if he never gives up, I guess the question is, who's going to keep bankrolling him? For everybody's benefit, there's going to have to be something like a settled peace. Otherwise, it's going to be a constant siege where we and other nations are going to be dumping money into a bonfire of Ukraine, or as we're seeing in recent times now, last week or so, Zelensky's being given the green light to start sending missiles and attacking into Russian territory more and more, which could come to a red line for Russia. This could go on for a long time. I got a lot of thoughts on it. There's a great YouTube channel that does this much better than I do, because the person running it is actually an academic of political science, as far as I understand it. Look up William Spaniel, sort of like Cocker Spaniel, but William Spaniel on YouTube. He does excellent. I mean, I'm not being facetious. Excellent videos on the sort of like the situation in Ukraine and Russia, the breakdown of the politics, the history, the considerations, the contingencies. It's amazing. It's really informative. I can't recommend it more highly. So William Spaniel on YouTube. Look that up. But let's move on. Oh, before I move on, there's Faustonia with a dancing, kabuki, lovely dog-cat fox. Oh, dog-cat fox.
Wow. Wow.
Oh, there's a Sinatra Says dog-cat fox. I was just talking about Sinatra. I didn't even see which dog-cat fox I clicked on. I've got so many dog-cat foxes in my well, okay, no, I don't. Okay. He's giving me that look. Okay, no, there's only one dog-cat fox. I just have several. Stop. What? Wow. Okay. There's only one of you. I have several sound files that are not of you. That's not what I meant. Okay. You're unique. You're one of a kind. Everybody loves you. Okay. Is that better? Okay. All right. Well, I think maybe I settled it. A settled piece, if you will. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to the revelation that I was exposed to. That sounds kind of dirty the way that I said it. On Midnight's Edge in the morning the other day, when Yellow Flash popped on to give us a scoop. This was on Wednesday? Yes, Wednesday. I think it was. No, sorry. Friday. I'm all kind of screwed up right now. I've had a busy couple of days. Yes, Friday morning on Midnight's Edge in the morning, Yellow Flash popped on to tell us that the Concord debacle at Sony is actually twice as bad as was originally reported. At least for Sony, at least financially. Let's get into this. This is from Bounding into Comics. The framing on this is weird, and I can't get rid of this big blank space at the top of the page, so apologies for that. Concord dev allegedly reveals failed game cost $400 million to make. Says it was referred to internally as a, quote, Star Wars-like project for Sony. Now, original estimates were somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 to 200 million was what it cost to make, and thus effectively lost. But now 400 million. And I asked on air at the time, like, how, because we didn't know, this is all brand new news at that time. I was like, how did they calculate that? Well, let's get into it. As if the game's troubles weren't already bad enough, a dev who purportedly worked on Concord has revealed that not only was the failed Heroes shooter far and wide Sony's most expensive title to date, but that it was considered by higher-ups to be the future of the PlayStation brand's entire operations. Okay, this wasn't some kind of one-off. This wasn't some kind of side project. Apparently, and again, this is just from one source so far, and this is purportedly, so it's effectively a glorified rumor, but apparently, Sony had everything riding on this being a success, a major success. These insights into Concord's disastrous development were first brought to light courtesy of Sacred Symbols host Colin Moriarty, who had learned of the information directly from a developer who actually worked on the game itself. Quote, someone who worked on Concord reached out to me, Moriarty told his fellow hosts Chris Raygun and Dustin Furman during an as-of-yet unreleased episode of their show, a clip of which he shared directly in his own personal Twitter account. Quote, and I verified who this person was and went through all that and talked to this person extensively for a long time, and I got some interesting information that I can share about Concord, unquote. His disclaimer complete, Moriarty then explained, quote, "The big that you really need to know here about this is that Concord cost about $400 million to make. The story goes that in the first quarter of 2023, Concord had basically entered into an alpha state," said the former IGN reporter. Quote, "This was before Sony had even purchased the team, but Sony had been working with Probably Monsters," and Probably Monsters is a company, "which was the original owner of Firewalk Studios." And Firewalk Studios is the developer of the game. "And Firewalk probably since late 2020, maybe 2021 at the latest on Concord. The game was in development before that. Up to the point that the game went into alpha state, they had already spent about $200 million on it." Okay, so Sony is just, attached to a company that's already developing a game on their own, right? And $200 million has been put into this thing. All right. Quote, "It's unclear how much of that money is from Probably Monsters," like a funder, the producer of the game, "and the original investors into the game, and how much of that money was from Sony," he continued. "When the game had already had $200 million spent on it and was basically in an alpha form in Q1 of 2023, from that point until the game launched, Sony spent another $200 million on it. The scuttlebutt behind the scenes about Concord is that the game was in a laughable shape when it was shown." Now, I gotta ask, why would you spend another or what caused them to spend $200 million on it? When I was on Midnight's Edge, Paul Chatto, who was one of my, I guess, co-panelists. It's so weird, like being on that show on that morning. I'm usually not on the morning show. I'm usually on the Tuesday night show. And on the morning show, like, all the bigwigs are there. Like, Andre was there. Paul Chatto was there. Paulie from Latino Slant was there. Yellow Flash showed up. I'm sitting there going like, I'm like a tiny little character in this giant play. And I just felt like really out of place. But I asked, what could possibly jack up the price like that? And Paul Chatto, in his wisdom, said, this is probably from having to change game engines halfway through development. And I thought, that's a good theory. That's a good theory. I don't know if that's the case, but that's a good theory. Quote, "And when the alpha was ready to go, and they were like, we're ready to get moving towards getting this thing out in the next year or two, it was in such horrible shape that Sony felt they needed to spend that much money again, $200 million plus $200 million, to get the game to the minimum viable product status," unquote. Not to the status of it being a great game, to get it just to viability. To get it to just viability. Okay, this is reading someone who's speaking on a live stream, and obviously everyone who speaks on a live stream is always completely coherent and articulate, as I know. As you know from listening to me. Anyway, quote, "And at that time, in Q1 2023, there was nothing done. Like, a major expense was having to urgently outsource much of the game to other studios to finish building the game. And two fundamental things weren't worked on at all up to the point where the game was shown in alpha. Onboarding, nothing about that. There was nothing about how players choose their character. And monetization. Two very expensive and very specific and boutique things that happen to games like this." In light of this information, Moriarty then summarized, quote, "This is the biggest game Sony has ever released from a budgetary standpoint from the first party or the second party. And they lost all of it because they made no money. They made about $1 million gross revenue, and then they gave it all back. So this was a huge multiple $100 million loss." Yeah, remember, with the failure of Concord 2 weeks after its release, they promised full refunds. And they were basically going to shut down the servers. The game's basically dead. So they made no money. They spent $400 million on nothing, which is incredible. It was bad enough when we thought it was like 150 or 200 million. 400 million. Nothing. To this end, the Sacred Symbols host moved to ask, quote, "Now the question is why? Why did this happen?" Unquote. And according to his source, the reason it did was because the game was, to a fault, quote, "heavily championed behind the scenes." This is starting to sound a lot like Anthem. If you guys know anything about the history of the game Anthem, this is starting to remind me of that. What's a good channel for Anthem stuff? Either Death of a Game or Legacy Killer HD. Legacy Killer HD did a really long history of the game Anthem at one point. It was really good. on YouTube. So look up either Death of a Game, which I think is just Nerd Slayer. Yeah, Nerd Slayer does Death of a Game, and Legacy Killer HD for Anthem News. This reminded me a lot of it, just because there was like one executive who's like, I want to play a game where I fly around like Iron Man. And everybody and their brother fell over themselves to try to meet this sort of desire, and it turned into a giant dumpster fire. Quote, the idea behind this was, and the term apparently verbatim had been used, that Concord is the future of PlayStation, said Moriarty source. Quote, that they had such major ambition behind this game that it was referred to internally as a Star Wars-like project for Sony. You know, just as an aside, anything you want to call a Star Wars-like project in this time is not a good sign. I don't know if you've seen what they've done with Star Wars lately. Success is not a word that's attached to that franchise anymore. But anyway, a Star Wars-like project for Sony in that it can repeatedly be revisited over and over and over again. We've already kind of seen little bits of this. The weekly story vignettes that we're going to release, and then of course the inclusion in Amazon's Secret Levels anthology. That's like just scratching the surface of it. Yeah, so they thought that they were creating effectively a turnkey, monumental franchise. Except that they were not just turning the key, unless the key cost $400 million. You have to, I don't know, build this up first. You have to find something that people already have interest in and then build upon it. So like, if they created a small game, you know, if they really, really believed in the characters and the setting and the franchise potential, you start off with something moderate, well promoted, but, you know, within a reasonable budget, and see how it does. You know, kind of, what's that term? Oh yeah, test market it. See if anybody gives a rip in the first place. You don't spend $400 million, put all your eggs in one basket on a, this will be the next Star Wars. But I guess you do. And when you do, you're Sony. Further, the dev informed Moriarty that, quote, a major thing about the game is that there was, and I think we can kind of get this vibe from just the nature of the people making it and the kind of the way game reads and all that, okay, a toxic positivity vibe in the studio. You weren't allowed to say anything, apparently, internally about this game. About how, like, something's wrong with it, character designs are not right, and so on and so forth, unquote. Toxic positivity. Yeah, masking. Right? The Emperor has no clothes. Oh, no, you can't say that. Quote, this was Sony's Herman Holst's baby, apparently, noted the show host, and he himself internally was a massive champion of the game. Right. So the CEO... Everybody's trying to please the CEO. No one's willing to tell him the Emperor has no clothes. And ultimately, $400 million gets blown away. Winding down his scoop by providing his own too long didn't read summation of all the information, Moriarty ultimately assessed, quote, the big things to take away. $400 million loss. The game was in horrible shape as of 18 months before release. Not even monetization, no onboarding, most content not even there. The game was in such bad shape at that point that they spent the budget of it again in urgent outsource to get the game finished. From all these different angles over an 18-month period. Internally, the game was considered part of the future of PlayStation with heavy cross-media references and a system of toxic positivity surrounding it that didn't allow anyone to meaningfully change the course of the game, unquote. So, there you go. This does sound a lot like Anthem in a lot of ways, but 400 and no return, right? They refunded all the games that anybody wanted to have refunded, and they shut everything down. $400 million. Boom. That's and not just of Sony's money. Remember, there was $200 million spent prior from other sources as well, but everybody lost. Everybody lost. That's crazy. That's just crazy. But, there you go. What do you guys have to say? Darren Root, technically they succeed to be Star Wars, the first Star Wars as a... Well, it's true. I mean, it's kind of like, you could call it the solo, a Star Wars story of Sony, if you want to compare it to Star Wars. Or the Acolyte of Sony. You know, I mean, the Acolyte cost, what was it, $200 million for the 8 episodes or something like that? Or the 4, how many, 6 episodes? I don't know. Anyway, something like that. Some ridiculous amount of money. And they got what out of it? Nothing. Nothing. Garbage. Full Metal Joker, dang, I wasn't notified about the stream. Well, Full Metal Joker, unless something changes, let me tell you something. Every Sunday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern. There you go. There's your notification. Now and into the future. Unless, I get sidetracked or something screws up my schedule or something. But either way, I'm glad you're here now. Let's see. Josh Hammond. I'm familiar with Anthem, BioWare, and EA were pushing that game, and it flopped hard along with Mass Effect Andromeda. Yeah, BioWare. Man, I tell you. And especially the stuff coming out this week on Dragon Age, The Veilguard. Or, hold on. I made a creative... let's see, where's the right button here? I made a creative little thing I've been putting out on Twitter every time I see a story about Dragon Age Veilguard. I made this like a month or 2 ago or something, but it's become more and more relevant as more information's come out about the game as it nears release. I just call it Drag Age the Veilguard because it's modern BioWare is a disaster, absolute disaster, and especially what they've done with this franchise. I cannot recommend more highly Dragon Age Origins. Dragon Age Origins, you get Dragon Age Origins, the Ultimate Edition on like Steam or something during a sale. Best money you'll spend for the sake of setting and game mechanics and adventure and characters and voice, the whole 9 yards. Dragon Age Origins is practically a masterpiece compared to most games made today. It's right up there with Knights of the Old Republic. It really is the best of old BioWare. But it also shows the absolute decline of that studio and the quality of the games they've produced, and especially in that franchise. Dragon Age 2, some people like Dragon Age 2. There are some elements of it that I like okay, but it was a major downgrade from Origins. And then Inquisition, Dragon Age 3, it looks really pretty. It's just boring. I remember the first time that I played Inquisition, I stopped about 3/4 of the way through the game. I just didn't care anymore. It was so many minuscule fetch quests. It felt like I was playing an MMO, except I was by myself. And for all the prettiness, it just didn't feel the same. It was too... I don't know. There was something very low fantasy about the first game. Even though you had wizards and dragons and stuff, it still remained kind of that like old school Dungeons and Dragons. Maybe you could call it Game of Thrones-ish kind of thing going on before Game of Thrones really became a thing. But it still had a certain sense of groundedness to things that constantly became more and more fabulous as the games went on. And it just stopped... It started having that edge. Like when you play the first game, when you're in combat, it had weight. I don't know how to explain it. Like, it wasn't fast, acrobatic combat. It felt like you had your characters really trudging through the effort of going to battle. You know, the weapon swings were slow in most cases. It felt like there was some kind of consequence to it all. And you'd come away afterwards, after a battle, and like your characters' faces would be, and their arm would be all bloody for a while and everything. It felt grounded. I don't know how else to put it. It felt like there was something, you're really participating in something that could kind of feel like you were there. As the games went on, it became less that. I don't know how else to explain it. But either way, I had very little hope for Veilguard, which wasn't the original title of the game. It was Dreadwolf. I don't know why they changed it from Dreadwolf. Who knows? But yeah, if you look at the character creation options, I had an exchange with a ranting monkey about this on there, and there was a video showing sliders for character creation, and the characters look terrible. The sliders, in particular, people are making jokes about the one that adjusts the butt size of the characters, and there's nothing, like you move the slider all the way to 100 and it looks like the person is shaped like a 2x4. It's pretty bad. But in particular, you can add top surgery scars to your character model. And yeah, it's just an aesthetic thing. It doesn't change game mechanics or anything. But its inclusion in it really tells you about the mindset in a fantasy world where you have shape changers and magic and everything else, top surgery scars. Okay, sure. Thank you, JB. Top surgery scars, that's a big yikes. I mean, it's definitely a red flag for the mentality that would make this game and what they were promoting. Also, the character designs are just fugly. It just, like I say, the original setting, the original setup for Dragon Age, the world that they created for that first game and its DLCs, it's great. I love it. But it's sort of just like with Star Wars and everything else. Slowly, over time, ideologies and mentalities took over the franchise and started infesting it with a whole bunch of other crazy social political stuff. And the quality of the writing completely went down the tubes. Anyways, it's really sad. It's really sad when you see something that you have so much a love for. I mean, I have the role-playing games, like the actual tabletop Dragon Age games from the original game, for like Origins. I've got the original novels. I was really into Dragon Age, the original setting. And then it just fell off a cliff, and it's really sad. And it makes it really difficult to try to come back to it because your head's just filled up with all this other stuff they decided to add on and change the canon or do this, that, or the other, or make this the focus and that not the focus. And anyway, I could go on. Well, let's move on. Let's move on to some science. You like some science news? Let's talk about some science news. Yeah, this kind of went under the radar this week, and I'm not quite sure of all the context, which is why I'm reading it now. But at least the implications were interesting. Prehistoric Earth was very hot. That offers clues about future Earth. Really? You mean prehistoric Earth before there were humans and industry and greenhouse gases? Okay. At times during the past 500 million years, carbon dioxide warmed our planet more than previously thought, according to a new reconstruction of Earth's deep past. Really? Okay. Over the past 500 million years, our planet has gone from hot to cold to hot again. The oceans have risen and fallen. Ice caps have melted and reformed. It is a story with several acts, and sunlight and carbon dioxide are the main players. Oh, sunlight and carbon dioxide. You mean, sort of, for lack of a better term, a universal constants in Earth's life cycle, regardless of what creatures are on the planet. Okay. The better scientists can reconstruct the climate story so far, the better they might predict how it will play out in the future. Well, what about now? And now that there's a major new character on the scene, humans. Well, are humans effectively of any consequence if this is the pattern of Earth historically? I don't know. In a study published Thursday, a team of researchers presents a sweeping new account of this history, one that combines geological evidence with predictions from computer models of the global climate. Their picture of Earth's deep past is a much toastier one than other studies have painted. Oh, okay. Now, just as a note, there's no such thing as climate change or human activity can't affect the climate or the environment. I'm not one of those thinkers on that. All the same, this does put a lot more questions into, well, is this really that abnormal? Misery Machine is here. Hey, Misery Machine. Resisting the urge to start talking about CRPGs from the 80s like a geezer, also high scribe. Yeah, no, I tell you what, not to get sidetracked again, I have been jonesing, and I blame Shady Grin for this. If Shady Grin's listening, I blame him for this. Shady Grin, without getting into details, Shady Grin has talked to me offline several times about role-playing games and things that he's working on and all this, and it's got my juices flowing. I used to be a major RPG person, tabletop, friends around a table, and a LARPer. I know, big news there. And I have been dying to run a game again. I'm not quite sure what game. I got some ideas. I used to be, my game of choice in the past was Vampire the Masquerade. I cannot tell you, and some of you who've been on the channel for a while know. Years and years spent on old school Vampire the Masquerade. And, but that franchise as well has been taken over. And, it's fortunate that there's some things you can say, well, I can ignore all that and just focus on what I liked about things. But still, it kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth. And plus the fact that I spent so much time on Vampire the Masquerade. It was very difficult to find a group of people who wanted to play who weren't thinking that it was vampire superheroes rather than like horror and tragedy and that kind of thing. So anyway, that's just an aside. But yeah, I've been jonesing to try to run a game again. The problem is that I really don't have a real life social life anymore. Ever since the lockdowns and elsewise, I'm just a hermit, effectively. And the prospect of trying to arrange something like that online using something like Roll20 or one of these other online platforms, it kind of makes me kind of cringe a little bit at all the mechanisms and such. So anyway, yeah, I could go on for a very long time talking about CRPGs and top-down stuff, Fallout, Knights of the Old Republic. I don't know. I could go on. Let's talk about Earth, though, for a little while. If you guys want to talk about role-playing games later, let me get past this article first. Let's see. Quote, "We're not saying it's going to heat up immediately," Dr. Judd said, "but in the long term, the planet will likely get warmer than we previously thought." You mean of its own accord, based on past patterns? Okay, so, and again, I'm relatively ambivalent on the whole climate change thing. I'm kind of a fatalist mind on the whole thing. If the planet is already, or let's say our environment, the planet's not going anywhere, but if our environment is already screwed because of decisions and actions undertaken decades ago or currently taking place in countries that don't care about regulating their output of gases or whatever, then that's the way it is. There's not a whole heck of a lot that's going to be changed at this point. Of course, I was told back when I was a kid in the 80s that if we didn't change our ways, we'd have acid rain falling down every day and melting our heads off by now. And that hasn't happened. That the ozone hole was going to open up and everybody would be cooked if they didn't go outside wrapped in gauze all the time. So, I've lived through a few other scares that never came to pass. That's not to say they can't, but I'm dubious. Anyway, in the meantime, she said, humans are adding carbon dioxide to the sky so quickly, nearly 40 billion tons per year, that it will have much more catastrophic effects than the gradual geologic shifts of Earth's past. Will it? I mean, I guess everything is understood by comparison, right? So, how hot did it get at its hottest times before there were humans? And is it all that much different from where things are at now? Can you say for sure that human activity is speeding up the process as compared to patterns of the past? That'd be my question. Do you know for a fact that human activity is changing the pattern of global warming and cooling historically as compared to past patterns? Quote, "When carbon dioxide and temperatures change rapidly, that's when everything on the planet just can't keep pace," Dr. Judd said. Okay, well, this has happened before, again, before humans existed, so if it can't keep pace, how are we here now? Quote, "The environment is changing at a rate that's too fast for organisms to keep up with, and that's when we experience mass extinctions," unquote. Okay, sure, I could see that, and I'm sure that's happened in the past. Is human activity outpacing previous natural patterns? I guess ultimately that's my question, because if this is going to happen anyway, and it sounds like it is, it might happen more gradually or otherwise, but if this is just the way things are going, we can't avoid it, right? It's inevitable. Other researchers who weren't involved in the study, that doesn't help, which was published in the journal Science, praised its novel methods. Quote, "It's very innovative and probably the only way to go in the future," unquote, said Christopher Scotese, a geologist at Northwestern University. Even so, Dr. Scotese questioned whether the researchers' hotter account of prehistoric Earth squared with other evidence about what the planet was like back then. The study suggests the world was intolerably hot at certain times when life seemed to be flourishing, he said. And it implies the planet was too warm for polar ice sheets to grow at times when such ice apparently existed. Okay, so science is a constantly evolving process, is what you're telling me. The past 500 million years were an eventful time for Earth. You don't say. I mean, 500 million years, a lot of things can happen. Wow, okay. Complex life arose. The continents broke apart. Yes. Geological processes heaved carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, then drew it down again, causing the climate to lurch between what scientists call greenhouse conditions and icehouse conditions. Ooh, frostpunk. Frostpunk might become a thing. During this period, according to Dr. Judd and her colleagues, the average temperature at Earth's surface ran as cool as 52 degrees Fahrenheit, or 11 degrees Celsius if you're a communist. I'm kidding, those of you that are. I'm just saying their whole metric nonsense, whatever. And as hot as 97 degrees Fahrenheit, with plenty of ups and downs in between. Well, sounds like every year on the planet already. It's almost like a 12-month cycle, except extended out over 500 million years. It's crazy. The most recent hothouse period was around 56 million years ago, when palm trees and alligators thrived in the Arctic Circle. Well, now there's an image for you. Palm trees and alligators in the Arctic Circle. After that, temperatures largely dropped until industrial age emissions of greenhouse gases put them on a rapid upswing a century and a half ago. Today, the globe's average annual temperature sits at about 59 degrees Fahrenheit and climbing. All right, and given the model of this recent research, is that outside the lines of past patterns? Maybe that's already been answered in here and I'm just too dense. To piece together how we got here, okay, Dr. Judd and her colleagues first combed through previous research to compile over 150,000 pieces of data entombed in fossils about ancient ocean temperatures. The shells and other body parts of sea creatures record invaluable information about the ocean's changing chemistry, but scattered fossils only give us snapshots of what was going on worldwide. Quote, "It's like you have 5 or 6 pieces of a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle," Dr. Judd said. Yes, it's called science. Quote, "It becomes really hard to picture what you're trying to put together," unquote. Yes, that's why science takes time. That's why she and her colleagues then used these data points to guide computer simulations of the prehistoric climate. Okay, so you're taking 5 or 6 pieces of the 1,000-piece puzzle and then guessing where they might go. Okay, so all of this is still, as with most things, a theory. A science theory. They did something akin to what meteorologists do to predict the weather. That instills so much confidence in their results. They used models to make guesses about what the climate might have looked like at a certain time, updated their models with fossil data, then made better guesses. Yes, okay, well, time will tell. Dr. Judd conducted the research for the study as a postdoctoral scholar at the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History and the University of Arizona. Her co-authors include scientists at both of those institutions, the University of Bristol in England and the University of California, Davis. Earth's temperatures from hundreds of millions of years ago carry grand implications for the story of animal life and evolution, said Ethan Grossman, a professor of geology at Texas A&M University who wasn't involved in the study. In a scorching climate, quote, "You can't have a high metabolic rate and keep your body cool enough for the proteins to survive," unquote, Dr. Grossman said. That could have delayed the emergence of advanced predators, he said, and perhaps humans too. It didn't. It demonstrably did not. Because here we are. So if their models are true and it got up to an average of 97 degrees Fahrenheit sometimes in the past, here we are. Rock us like a hurricane. And of course, if this and if that, and what if Dr. Doom was the Sorcerer Supreme? I don't know. Like I say, I'm kind of a fatalist on these things. Like I said, I was reared under the idea that all the CFCs and all the hairspray that people were using and all the automotive emissions and all the gases and everything we've been pumping into the air for decades and decades and decades since the Industrial Revolution had already doomed us. It was already out there in the atmosphere, it was already out there in the environment. The buildup of it all was already at toxic levels. We were all going to have acid rain and ozone holes, and we were all going to have, living in an apocalypse of climate disasters over and over again. And so as a kid, I was just like, well, they keep telling me that we're already screwed, but we have to change our ways. And I thought, well, if we change our ways now, it's too late, right? So I always had that mentality whenever I hear this stuff. It's like, it's already too late. It's whatever's happening. The stuff's in the water. Oh, we've been using this particular plastic in water bottles all these years, and unbeknownst to us, it had stuff in it that was going to like do this, that, and the other to you and give you cancer and all. I'm like, well, then I guess we're already screwed. It's just, I don't know. There's no such, I don't really feel a sense of hope overall, because all these decisions that were made before I was born or outside of my own knowledge or control have already been affecting me and everybody around me for decades and decades. So it's like, it is what it is. Get on with your life. I don't know. Maybe I'm just too curmudgeonly for my own good. Could be the case. Let's see. Whoops. I didn't scroll down. Come on, comments. What do you guys have to say? Advocast, screw it. I'll be long gone before the planet burns to a cinder. Fuck the future people. They are all assholes anyway. I'm not quite that cynical. I'm not quite that cynical. Giant freaking crocodiles on a super hot Earth aren't advanced predators? I know, right? I mean, they've only survived millions of years of evolution to be here with us today, so, yeah. JB, they got rid of CFCs. Oh, I know they got rid of them. But like I said, I was told that all the previously released CFCs, by the time they did get rid of them, were already up in the atmosphere and causing damage and destroying the ozone and everything else, and that everything was already doomed. We were already doomed. I lived in a sort of, well, not quite, because it was still going on at the time, but it was just about over, a post-Cold War, yet inevitable environmental catastrophe world. That's sort of the mindset I was raised in. Is like, yeah, the threat of nuclear war might have gone by the wayside, but it doesn't matter because we're all going to be fried by unfiltered UV rays in the next 10 years. That's kind of the mentality I grew up with. Thank you, Mr. Tickletrunk, for the huggy, lovely dog cat fox. Oh, dog cat fox.
Wow.
That's a tailed feature dog cat fox. Tailed feature whose YouTube anniversary is either upon us or coming soon. Because his always happens before mine. Mine's on October 11th. I think his is sometime in the month of September. So if it hasn't already happened, it's close to happening. So if you frequent tailed feature either on X or on YouTube, be sure to send him a happy anniversary, whether it's slightly late or slightly early message if you have the opportunity. YouTube anniversary, that is. Let's see, Faustoni. At the end of Michael Crichton's book, State of Fear, he gave a pretty good breakdown of this hysteria. Yeah, and that's what I grew up with, and I didn't have anything to compare it to otherwise, so I just kind of took it as, as a kid, I just took it as fact. It's like, well, I mean, oh my gosh, we're all in trouble. Because, like, I remember, I can't remember if it was a documentary I saw or some kind of animation or something, but there was like an artist's rendition or something of what life in the year 2000 was going to look like. And you had this person, I honestly can't remember, I can't tell if I'm making this up as a false memory or I'm remembering some kind of TV special on it or something, but the image that I have in my head is that it shows someone getting ready to go to work. And it all starts out very normal. They like get up, they like brush their teeth, they have their breakfast or whatever. And then they're getting ready to go outside. And they put on their boots, they put on their thick pants, they put on gloves and a big coat, and they wrap their face in a scarf, and they put on goggles, and then they get out their like rubberized or vulcanized umbrella, and they step outside into like acid rain, and this sort of like the film had been colored so that it looked like UV rays were coming down, and everybody out on the street is operating like this, and like, welcome to life in the year 2000. Something like, it was like one of those scare tactic ads. That's what I remember. I can't tell if that's something I'm just kind of making up, but that's the kind of thing I would see in different places growing up, and I mean, it was just, it was a horror story. I was like getting ready for like the end of the world or something, and like some kind of Mad Max territory to start taking over. But here we are. It's a nice day out. I could go outside. I'm not going to have my hair burned off by UV rays. Not yet, anyway. JB, they were like, little scribe, if you pick your nose again, a big flood will come and kill us all. Something like that. Something like that. Recycle. You better recycle that can or else the world's going to fall apart. It was like that part in Independence Day where Jeff Goldblum's character finds somebody didn't recycle their can in the right receptacle or something. He's like freaking out. Kind of like that. Mr. C, Yurgi here, late to the party, but I hear you want to run Ravenloft? Well, I don't know where you heard that. That's literally my favorite module, and if you wanted to run something virtual, I would totally play. Okay, well, I didn't say Ravenloft. I think it's the D&D from that. See, here's the thing. I never played D&D until like my late 20s or something. And the first time I played D&D, and this is a true story, I think I've told this before. We spent 3 hours creating characters, right? And I'm big on story, I'm big on background, I like doing preludes and origins. In college, I ran a 9-person Star Wars D20 tabletop campaign back when like the Attack of the Clones hadn't come out yet. This is in between Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones. And I ran the most intricate prelude stories for each character to bring them into this. It was amazing. I'm to this day I'm just bewildered that I was able to pull it off. 9 players is something else for a tabletop game, and it actually worked. Everybody enjoyed it. I still heard people talk about it years after the fact. But that's as close as I got to something like D&D until my mid to late 20s. And the first time I ever played D&D, we spent 3 hours making characters. And I did all this work, and I went through all the numbers, and I am not a numbers cruncher. I'm an English major, not a math major. And so I had to have a lot of help in making this. 3 hours doing this. And then we start playing. And we play for another 3 hours. And it's just this opening story where we're all in this village, and we're all kind of doing our thing. And all of a sudden, the village is attacked by all these monsters and stuff and things. And we fight, and we roll, and we fight, and we narrate, and we spend another 3 hours doing all this rolling and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Math. And then, of course, we get beaten. You know, not all killed or something, but we get defeated, and they run off with the princess or whatever. And that was the end of the session. And afterwards, the DM made the worst mistake I think a DM can make. Now I understand this, is to say something to the effect of, well, yeah, you weren't going to win anyway. Like the module, the adventure he was running required that this be a defeat. And in my little old mind, I thought to myself for a second, well, I suppose that was a learning experience to how D&D works, but I also just spent 3 hours rolling dice for nothing. For nothing. And I thought, you could have narrated all of this in an hour, saved us all the time in the world, and then got to the part of the game that was consequential where rolling dice mattered. I would have much rather role-played out this event than to roll dice futilely the entire time. And that turned me off from D&D for like 5 years. It was bad. It was really bad. Yeah, it would have been. This is the thing. If you're gonna, invariably or inherently screw over your players, don't tell them. Make them feel like what they did had consequence. All right, it's part of the trick of the trade. This is something I've learned over time. Is that you're there for people to participate and feel like they've accomplished something, they've participated in something. Do not tell them that everything they did was for naught in real life. Just don't. If the outcome of a roll is inevitable because of the necessities of the story, then just don't tell them it was inevitable. Or come up with a creative way to get to the same end, but still giving the player's actions meaning. This is the symbiotic relationship between the game master or the storyteller and the players, right? They throw you curveballs that you have to account for to still get to the point that you want, unless you're running an open-ended game. And I much prefer open-ended games than ones with a very strict structure. Anyway, that's all to say. I have played Ravenloft. I played the revised version of Ravenloft. I think it was 5th ed Ravenloft, the more recent version that came out a couple of years ago. And I enjoyed it okay. Now I'm getting into tabletop or war stories. I'll tell you this one. This is the best one. So I was playing a human ranger, and I got to take a cantrip, which is like a little spell. And I didn't know what I was going to do, but I thought, well, if I'm a ranger and there's this one cantrip, and I think it was called Silence. And essentially it says that you create a sort of bubble around you of a particular radius and no sound escapes this bubble. And I thought, well, that's good for like, being a hunter and stalking and that kind of stuff. And so I took that because there weren't a lot of options that made sense to me at the time. And I didn't even think about it again until halfway through the campaign. We get to this. I don't want to ruin it for anybody. I won't be specific about it. But anyway, we get to this magic using mini boss. This really intimidating, been building up for like a couple of sessions. We get to this really scary mini boss, and we're in the mini boss's base, and like they're getting ready to cast all these spells on us. And everybody in the group is like, uh-oh, here we go. And then we get to initiative, and I won the initiative, and the GM turns to me and says, what do you do? And I say, I cast Silence. And the look on the DM's face drops. And he wasn't faking. Like, I've known this guy for years and years and years. And he's like, and so for the next like 3 or 4 minutes, he's looking through the write-up on this bad guy. And nearly every single spell used by this bad guy, everything in this bad guy's arsenal requires a verbal component to cast. And he's like, I use this level 1 cantrip or spell or whatever you want to call it, ritual. And I've completely nerfed this villain for the next like 6 rounds or something or whatever it was. And it was almost like out of a comedy skit. Between me and the fighter and everybody else, we riddle her with arrows and slashes, and she's down within like, I don't know, 3 or 4 rounds or something. She's down and done. And she was supposed to be like this mid-level, like not a mini boss, like, oh, it's a little bit more difficult than other people. No, this is supposed to be a significant enemy. And I felt so good about myself. And I'd obviously taken the DM by surprise, but it was completely within the rules, completely legit. And that's the best kind of feeling, when you use what's in front of you and you solve a problem and you even overcome something that seemed very daunting. And that was my best session of D&D ever. Not because I won, but because everything worked within the rules set and it all just came together. And it was teamwork. It wasn't just me. I mean, I might have nerfed her spells, but I was like a level 3 ranger or something, or 5 ranger at that point or something, so I wasn't going to take her on by myself. Anyway, back to your original question. I'm not looking to run or play in Ravenloft, unless you were inserting Ravenloft because you really want to play Ravenloft. And D&D would not be my first choice if I were to run a game. I'd probably do something a little less crunchy. But anyway, I've been talking about this for years, but it's the idea of trying to run something online has always intimidated me, just because of the different time zones and people's schedules, and that I'd be, I don't know. I'm neurotic. What do you want me to say? I'm neurotic. Anyway, JB says, I make sure to explain where I'm getting the rules, and because I understand stats, what his odds of rolling, say, a 3+ are, etc. Yeah, there has to be a certain level of trust between the person running the game and people playing, obviously. Because if you think you're being done dirty, or suspect that something's not being done well, or somebody's getting favorable treatment, and so on. But that has to be built up over time and through demonstrations of how you run a game. And if you make a mistake, you fess up to making a mistake, and you try to do the best that you can. You have to understand, DMs are human just like everybody else most times. Anyway, I could go on about role-playing games, but let's cap off the show with the most bizarre headline I saw in the last couple days, and I just didn't know what to make of it. It's kind of like a TEDx in that regard. So let's take a look at this last article. I might not read the whole thing because I'm not quite sure where it's going, but here we go. Guest essay on the New York Times. Padma Lakshmi, if I'm saying that correctly. As a cook, here's what I see in Kamala Harris. Yeah, okay. It's relatively brief, but okay. As a cook, and I when I saw this headline on Twitter or whatever, I thought, What? I see what everyone else sees on Kamala Harris's resume. What, do you? Well, I can't wait to hear it. A history of public service that qualifies her for the presidency. But I would argue that the qualities she shows as a cook might say even more about her success as a leader. Okay, so when I read the headline of this, I was not seeing things. Okay, so her abilities in the kitchen, more so than her public service, qualify her to be president of the United States. Okay. What qualities make for a good cook? Well, if I believe Gordon Ramsay and the Bear, swearing a lot and getting angry at people. But I could be wrong. Which make for a good president? In a lot of cases, they overlap. Cooking well requires organization, attention to detail, patience, and the impulse to bring people together. Not according to what I've seen elsewise. In a divided country, these qualities can help Miss Harris be a good, even a great president. Sure. Organization, attention to detail, and patience. Yes, those qualities would be desirable in a leader. I give you that. Talking about food is a way to relate to more Americans, even those uninterested in her politics. We've all been eating since we were babies, and we're experts on our own tastes. Talking about food paves the way to harder conversations. Food removes barriers and unites us. Unless it contains cilantro, in which case it all tastes like soap, and I hate it. Anyway, Miss Harris, isn't she married? Miss Harris evinces clear delight in cooking and in talking about almost any type of food, a passion that is core to who she is, like basketball for Barack Obama or golf for Donald Trump. Really? So someone liking basketball, someone liking golf, someone liking to cook, these are elements that I'm supposed to take as meaning to someone's character? You know, O.J. Simpson really loved to golf. Anyway, she is omnivorous, and a versatile cook. Great. We got a glimpse of who... sorry, I keep catching on this. I realize this is old-fashioned. Maybe I'm just an old fuddy-duddy. But if you're married, regardless of which last name you're going to take, you're Mrs. Okay, Miss is someone who's single. Miss is someone who is unattached. Right? It just... I don't know. Call me irresponsible. Anyway. We got a glimpse of who Miss Harris is in the kitchen in the YouTube series Cooking with Kamala, filmed during the 2020 campaign. Maybe you did. I never saw these things, but okay. In the videos and elsewhere, she talks about turkey stock and tacos, Moroccan tangines and gumbo, frying bacon with apples. She says that, quote, bacon is a spice as far as I'm concerned, unquote. Wow. As a host and a judge on Top Chef, I could see contestants' characteristics and potential by watching them in the kitchen. Well, okay, I mean, to a certain extent, yes, if you see people interacting with other people, if you see them under a high-pressure situation or having to take on a leadership role, yes, you can get some sense of someone's character under stress, or someone's organization skills, leadership, their natural charisma. Yeah, okay, sure, okay. One chef, for instance, always splattered food and left jars knocked over. He was frazzled and out of his depth, displaying a lack of leadership potential. Okay, sure. If people are handling food correctly enough to elevate it, I know they're thoughtful. If they panic under pressure when the clock is ticking, I know what they're like in a crisis. Yes, and that tells you how good they are at being a cook. That does not inherently carry over to other disciplines. I'm a great cook in the kitchen. I'm good under pressure. I'm organized, etc. Great. You'll make an excellent professor of mathematics. On my show, Taste the Nation, I saw that many cooks are nurturers, using food to give care, comfort, and create community. On a small island off South Carolina, I met a chef named Bill Green, whose restaurant, Gullah Grub, functions as a community center. He dispenses food and teaches children to cook using the produce he and his partner grow on their farm by the marsh. Indeed, we cooks rarely cook just for ourselves. When I recently spoke with the great chef and educator Jacques Pepin, he told me, quote, "You have to give of yourself to be a good cook," unquote. I want a president who is intent on nurturing and nourishing all Americans. Well, okay. I recently spoke with Mina Harris, the vice president's niece. Okay. The two spent a lot of time together in the kitchen while Mina was growing up. Excuse me. Kamala helped teach Mina to cook as her sous chef, but she conveyed bigger lessons in the kitchen by her example. She taught Mina to be patient and to pay attention to how ingredients work so she could confidently innovate. Miss Harris was detail-oriented, another sign of a good cook and leader. She taught her niece to problem-solve on the fly to bring balance to a dish and the importance of keeping close with the people she loves. That's great. That's great. None of that has to do with being president of the United States. None of that has to do with being a smart political tactician or someone who's not going to stand on a pedestal and lie about their opponent or the state of the world. Sorry. Similarly, in a Cooking with Kamala video, Miss Harris gives a cooking lesson to Senator Mark Warner, Democrat of Virginia, who had microwaved a tuna melt and hadn't even drained the liquid from the tuna in the can. Quote, "I love you to pieces, and we got to work this whole tuna salad thing out," unquote, she tells him, laughing. In another cooking video, the actress Mindy Kaling says she's worried that Miss Harris may not like her Indian food. Why not? Miss Harris is... What? Okay. Miss Harris reassures her, quote, "Can I just tell you something?" Miss Harris asks, lowering her voice confidentially. "I've never made dosas." Okay. Some of the videos have a policy dimension, too. Again, these are videos from 4 years ago, correct? Okay. Miss Harris has marched with McDonald's workers seeking better pay and supported legislation expanding SNAP benefits, as well as improving farm workers' wages. As a presidential candidate, she has said she will back a ban on price gouging on groceries. Yeah, price controls on food. Okay. In various ways, Miss Harris's candidacy is reinventing the rules. What? As she simply bypasses old expectations about race, gender, and political campaigning. Okay, well, I can't speak to the first two because those are irrelevant to me, but political campaigning, yes. Being effectively cloistered away from the press and the public for months on end after becoming the candidate is bypassing old expectations about political campaigning. I'll give you that. I'd love to hear what you think the old expectations about race and gender are. Food is yet another example of how Miss Harris sidesteps generations of tension. Truth be told, until this article, I had absolutely no idea that Kamala Harris was some kind of amateur chef. I honestly had no idea. So if this is part and parcel with her personality and activities and such, it's honestly news to me. But again, maybe that's just me being in some kind of bubble. In 1992, Hillary Clinton defended her professional life as a lawyer, saying, quote, "I suppose I could have stayed home, baked cookies," unquote. When her comments galled women who did stay home, she repented by submitting a cookie recipe to a bake-off with Barbara Bush, hosted by the magazine Family Circle. That First Lady bake-off continued in every presidential election until Family Circle folded in 2019. Right. She says something honest about her attitude towards her career, and then she has to repent, which doesn't seem genuine, but seems more like a PR move. Today, in talking about cooking, Miss Harris has found a way to reconcile what a previous generation may have seen as a contradiction and simply present it as who she is. Sure, I mean, if Hillary Clinton had stuck by her guns and said, look, you know, I focused on my career. I wanted a professional career as a lawyer. It takes a lot of work and dedication and everything else. I probably would have had more respect for her than if she just like turned around and like, oh, wait, no, sorry, really, I like to bake, everybody. Like, come on. But the way she talks about food and access to food is also a way of opening doors and building consensus about who Americans are. While campaigning, Miss Harris has sometimes cooked with regular people. Because Miss Harris is not regular people, obviously. Sharing personal recipes. So often, I have found that cooking helps break the ice. Once filming an episode of Taste the Nation. This is just an advertisement for your shows. It really feels like it. Once filming an episode of Taste the Nation, an elder woman who was reluctant to speak of the loss of her children while escaping the Khmer Rouge. But after 90 minutes of making Noom Bon Chok, a Cambodian fish noodle soup, we not only shared the dish, but also connected by revealing deeply personal stories. Yeah, deeply personal that you had no problem broadcasting to the world on your TV show. Okay. Curiosity and care about the foods and experiences of others is at the heart of Taste the Nation. This is an advertisement. This is just an advertisement. These are also, I think, at the heart of Miss Harris's diverse culinary repertoire, which speaks to her personal history as a child of immigrants growing up in a multi-ethnic California neighborhood and, later, her travels across the country as vice president. As you know, she grew up in a middle-class family. Anyway, food relays the complexity of people's stories. It tells the places they've lived, the people they've shared meals with. The foods we talk about and share define how we see ourselves as a country. Well, I often talk about pepper jacks and goldfish crackers. I wonder what that says about me. Are there any, like, culinary astrologists or astronomers? No, not astrologists, yes. Is there, like, a term for, like, a culinary astrologist? Like, I can tell something about you by the foods you like? There's got to be something like... If there isn't, I copyright that industry right now. I want every penny out of that one, because I bet you someone's going to pay money to have their actual tea leaves read. In cooking, Miss Harris displays the very qualities this country sorely needs. Her care and her ability to tell a new kind of story about what it means to be American. Yeah, she has shown her hand at really telling stories so far. There is something very American and expansive about including many food traditions in one kitchen. Miss Harris's next cooking adventure and all the traditions it will bring together should be in the White House. Well, I think, unbeknownst to me, my headline on this, the one that I put onto my tweet advertising this stream, was far too correct. Kamala Harris for White House chef. Anyway, that happened. JB, thank you so much. Soup so good you'll forget about she's dumb. Yeah, this was someone advertising themselves and trying very desperately to tie it to politics, but not about politics, just about character witness. I don't know. Gastology. Gastropomp. There you go. Fastrology. Yeah, it's coming, guys. If that article is any indication, what I like to eat, how I eat it, tells me something about who I am and how I fit into this country. Oh, great. And also, old guy bringing up a very, very, very old controversy. Cereal's not soup. Do I still have that somewhere? I used to have. Maybe I still have it somewhere in here. Do I have the video of that? Yeah, I did some promotional stuff for myself, Some Dumb American, and Ranting Monkey way back when. They're on my channel. You can find them. And I did clips. Do I have that here? Oh, I don't have it handy. If I had it handy, I'd play it, but I don't have it. It's not a clip I can upload, unfortunately. But anyway, there's one on there about the whole cereal is soup controversy and my reaction to it at the time. I think it's still funny. You might think it was funny, too. Kieverdam, thank you so much. That article was not needed. Well earned. Well earned. Thank you, Kieverdam. Appreciate it. That was great. That was great. And Toot Sweet thinks it was funny, too. Well, that's all I had. Those are all the articles I had. A couple minutes here. Anything you guys want to talk about? Anything else? Also, if I didn't already mention, The Misery Machine, Drewby and Yurgi. Currently, I am 3 episodes away from finishing the Monsters Eric and Lyle Menendez story on Netflix, and hopefully in the relatively near future, myself and the Misery Machine will get together to dish about our thoughts on the series. So look forward to that. That'll be an interesting entry into the Living on Borrowed Crime series I have on my channel here. What else can I talk? Oh yeah, and check their channel as well if you're interested in true crime. With the always relevant caveat, the stories they cover are not pleasant, but they are informative and hopefully more of a warning and an attempt at least to underscore in many cases the failings in the system, especially when it comes to the protection of children. Although they do cover other stories as well, so check out The Misery Machine. Or on X, it's at @misery_podcast, all lowercase. Let's see. What was the most recent song you listened to? So that's kind of an odd question, but I have an answer to that one. For some reason, as YouTube is sometimes wont to do, it recommends to me videos that have absolutely nothing to do with my interests, and yet somehow I just decide to click on. And this one was a Beat Saber video. Someone who recorded themselves doing the game Beat Saber. To the song, it's called Light It Up. I don't know the name of the artist, it's some kind of remix or something. But you have this waifu character with a Darth Maul lightsaber, chopping up cubes in rhythm to the song. And I gotta tell you, first, the player's efficacy and skill and just dancing quality with the blades as they're doing this thing is really kind of hypnotic. And then the beat to the song, even though it's relatively basic, is also very catchy. So in combination with the lightsaber action plus the song, I can see why it has 10 million views. I didn't realize this after I watched the video. I was like, oh my God, this thing's like 6 or 7 years old and has 10 million views. Like, I can see why. I could see why somebody would find this catchy. So whatever, it's just called Light It Up by somebody, and it's kind of an EDM kind of thing, but it was catchy. There you go. I was listening to Gloria Estefan. Bad, 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 bad boys. It makes me feel so good. Yeah, Gloria Estefan. That was a big deal on VH1 back in the day. I used to like those songs quite a bit. Let's see. The waifu is part of your algorithm subscribe. Probably somewhere in there. I don't really pay attention to anime and stuff, but occasionally YouTube just says, "Hey, you might like this video," and it's got like 500 views from 10 years ago, and it's like, what? I kind of hope that some of my videos end up that way, like some random person is recommended a video of mine from like 5 or 6 years ago. I'm like, what is this? And then they find me. Let's see. Anything else on here? Well, wait a second here. Oh, I guess I should have prepared a link to the Discord server. I can do that now. And save ourselves some trouble here. So let me get a link to the Discord server going on. So if you're not already a member of the Discord server, tell you what, with this link, IVWED, you can find yourself on the Discord server. And particularly the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, all you have to do is say the secret word. The secret word will tell me you are not a bot, and have thus earned the right, the privilege, and the entitlement to join the Discord server. And today's secret word is, I don't know, what's a good word from the stuff that we read? Something interesting. Miss. Just say, hello, miss. You can craft it either as MISS or just MS period. Hello, miss. And I'll know that you watched today's show. Also, you can find me here Thursdays, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for TED Excellence, where I take a look at off-brand TED Talks for entertainment and education with TEDx Bingo, as well as the Sunday stream, which happens, Full Metal Joker, every Sunday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, unless something goofy happens. And if you want to know if something goofy is going to happen, I will tell you on my X account, scribe_light, as you see there on the screen. Also, I am usually on the Midnight's Edge After Dark show on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern to talk about movies and video games and all types of crazy stuff. And probably nerd out on different things. And if you're curious about why I was on the Midnight's Edge morning show on Friday, I was there primarily to give my insight and or opinions regarding the Am I a Racist documentary that was just released by Matt Walsh. I was given the opportunity to watch that film and then to comment on it on there. And yeah, it was It was like watching highlights from stuff that I've covered for the last 8 years. And honestly, that documentary probably would have had more impact if it had come out 2 or 3 years ago, because there was literally nothing in that documentary that could not have been said or point that could not have been made over the last 5 years. So it kind of felt like a little too late, because the subjects being covered are already fairly well saturated, but maybe that's just me. So I'm a little cynical about it, although Tom Connors and others on the stream were like, well, yeah, most people that are watching this probably already know about this stuff, but what you want to do is take someone to see this who doesn't know about it so they can be more informed. Like, I suppose that might be beneficial, but like I say, I'm a bit of a cynic at this point. And Keeverdam, thank you for posting the Midnight's Edge stream link there. Yep, that's the one. I'm not usually on the morning show, so I was a little bit starstruck being around some of the personalities and people on that stream. And it might show in me getting a little nervous and babbling at places, but I did my best. Anyway, everyone, I want to thank you for joining me this morning for the Sunday stream. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here is so well behaved. You have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated either to myself or to the fundraisers at the top of the chat box, thank you guys so much for your generosity. Very much appreciated. Everyone, hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday, acid rain or otherwise present. Hope you have a good rest of your weekend, and that the week ahead is also peaceful and productive. And I also hope that you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon. I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.